everybody. I'd like to add my welcome to this wonderful tour today. And again, thank you to Megan and the Committee for Green Foothills and the Open Space Authority and other partners for organizing it. In your packet, there is a one-page handout called Coyote Valley Agriculture. So please grab that. And so far today, we've heard about water resources, we've heard about natural resources and wildlife, and now we're going to talk about agriculture. But that is not a separate land use and a separate activity. It's very much an activity that's integrated with the water values and the natural resource values of this very important valley. While we drive today, I'm going to point out some sites to the right and the left, and I'm going to spew out a few agricultural facts. But really, there are four things that are most important that I'd like you to remember. One is that agriculture in the Coyote Valley is alive and well, contrary to some rumors to the contrary. The agriculture here needs a lot of investment in farmland preservation, like we've heard, but also in infrastructure and various kinds of farmer support. Third, there is huge demand for agricultural operations that would love to operate here in the Coyote Valley on all scales, especially agriculture that's multifunctional, that really complements the wildlife and natural resource values of this place. And the fourth point is it is land use uncertainty that is one of the key things that is stopping that investment from happening. So I'm going to sort of start pointing things out. So on the right-hand side, you'll see this large expanse. It's about 500 acres, currently farmed by Agrico Hay, which is one of the largest hay and cattle operations actually in the county. But picture, years ago, this was an orchard. And it was so important for prune production that the farmers actually put tiles, drainage pipes underneath this area because to keep the roots of the trees from getting too wet. You heard from John that the water table here can come up to 10 feet to depth to groundwater. The orchards here, this is the sort of southern end of the Valley of the Heart's Delight, were also so important that there was actually a canal that went from the very southern part of the Coyote Valley, Coyote Creek, to the northern part of the Coyote Creek here, that also was a bypass for some of the water, so that again there was some control for the depth to groundwater of this very important orchard area. It's again, as you can see from your handout, there are dozens of growers and dozens of crops here in the Coyote Valley. Coming up here on the right, you'll see a small remaining orchard, but you'll see some of the crops that are grown by Usugi Farms. We're going to talk to Pete Aiello of Usugi Farms a little bit later. I'm trying to see exactly what this is. It looks like maybe a pepper crop. This area here on the right, it looks green and lush. Well, that's part of the almost 1,900 acres of prime farmland, the best kind of farmland in California. Actually, on the left-hand side, for the most part, it looks kind of dry and dusty, but actually that too is designated as prime farmland, or it would be if it was irrigated. That's how that kind of designation of farmland works out. You've heard a little bit about the history of this valley as an oak savanna and seasonal wetlands, but for centuries it was also a very important agricultural area suited for many kinds of agricultural production: grain, forage crops, orchards, row crops, and nursery products. The orchard plantings were so vast, they really made this area one of the most important agricultural areas for fruit production, really for the entire country. If you take a look at your handout here, you'll see on one side it lists all the crops and all of the different growers, and on the other side, thank you to the support and data from the County Agricultural Commissioner's Office, and I want to thank Joe DeVinny is here and his staff for getting us this information, which is not yet publicly released. But what you will see is that Santa Clara County agriculture's value for this last year, 2016, was about $308 million. The Coyote Valley is worth 30% of that, about $88 million, and grows many of the kinds of crops that you're going to see in the entire county. On the left-hand side of that handout, again, you'll see these maps of prime farmland. So this land over to the left, again, it looks dry, but if irrigated would be prime farmland. And then the second little map we've shown shows this overlay of extraordinary habitat and natural resources. And again, it's the integration of those values, the agricultural values, with the water. We heard about the water supply here. There are not many places you could say in California, there's a handful that have both prime farmland and a sufficient water supply, let alone the kind of benign climate that you have here and access to markets. So this is really an extraordinary agricultural valley. On the right-hand side here, you see some of the greenhouses. These are primarily used today for growing Asian vegetables, and there are many Asian vegetable growers at scales from 3 to about 20 acres. It's a very intensive and land use, but it also can be a little bit marginal. And these greenhouse operations really are in need of a lot of kind of upgrades and farmer support. But again, that needs to happen in the context of a kind of a conservation and agricultural plan that pertains to the entire valley. Coming up on the left here are the largest cherry orchards in the Coyote Valley, one of the larger plantings in the whole county, about 260 acres. These were for a long time owned by the Felice and Marchese families, longtime county farmers, and today they are leased by El Camino Packing, and let me see, also a partnership with the Borello Farms. You'll see here there's also on the right-hand side industrial land uses that have been put here over time. One of the difficulties with agriculture is as agriculture begins to leave an area and as disinvestment begins to happen, you will see some of the agricultural infrastructure will begin to leave, and then we will see these other kind of land uses which make agriculture a little problematic, but certainly not impossible. On the right here, you see the railroad tracks and the alignment for high-speed rail. This little cherry orchard we're coming up to on the left-hand side here is that was just planted 3 years ago by a partnership of Borello Farms and Yasugi, and that's planned as a U-pick operation, which is a wonderful idea because that helps bring more people out to appreciate both the agriculture and also the recreational and natural resource values of this area. You know, we're just going to be able to see going down the main road a couple of the different operations, but tucked into the left are some very long-term nursery operations, Omega Farms growing long-stemmed chrysanthemums, and the Coyote Valley Nursery. This large parcel to the left, is actually owned by the city of San Jose and was long intended actually for a big sort of soccer complex, and now I think there's discussions about what that land use will be. Also off to the left is this high school. It's part of Morgan Hill Unified School District and Sobrato High that has a very vibrant agricultural program. Of the 1,500 students in that school, fully 500 of those students, I should say, are involved in the agricultural program. There's a wonderful farm there. And when they see agricultural program, they're not necessarily looking at all farming careers. They're looking at the whole range of careers, from agriculture and technology and breeding programs and soil science that goes into the makeup of what sustainable agriculture is today. So now we're entering the developed part, the very edge. So this is what the southern edge of the green belt is. A number of years ago, in around 2005 and 6, we were hired by the city of San Jose during the specific plan process to actually take a look at existing conditions in the greenbelt and to try to identify some of the best approaches for preserving what was called sort of rural character for this urban-rural buffer. And that's sort of a challenge, because when you have small-scale parcelization, that can very much be problematic for many kinds of agriculture. We're going to take a right here. Yeah. But even with that said, if you go up to places like, Sonoma County, where there's such a strong local food, farm-to-table ethic, there are farmers starting out, specialty crop farmers, immigrant farmers, who are absolutely making a go of small parcels that are 5 acres and 10 acres, as long as there's a long-term commitment in the county to preserve agriculture. One of the issues with some of these areas, we'll come up again, we'll see on the right and left-hand side some of these open fields. I think there's a goat operation there over on the left. But when we look at some of these fields that are open and dry, it's not that they're bad for agriculture, so-called, but they may have wells that need retrofitting. Now, retrofitting a well can cost usually $50,000. Farmers who are often leaseholders are only going to do that if they know that that investment is going to pay off over many, many years. And when there's uncertainty about whether those agricultural operations are going to stay, clearly those investments become less and less worthwhile. Again, from the table here, you're going to see that some of the most profitable crops here in the valley are bell peppers. A lot of those are grown by a couple of larger growers, Yusugi Farms. A lot of those are kind of what we would call commodity crops that are intended for sort of the whole national market, which is really important. That we can provide out of this county, the specialty bell peppers. But it also means that when a commodity crop is grown, it's something that's not necessarily identified as sort of a local food crop per se. In front of us, you'll see this beautiful oak-covered hillside. A lot of that is part of Tilton Ranch. That's a 2,500 acre cow and calf operation that is a multi-generational long-term holder of those beautiful hillsides. And I should add, you can see from your crop chart that there is a lot of hay and forage crops grown in the valley. Well, 2 points. In drought years, we really need, and even in years like this, when there's periods at the end of the summer when there's not enough natural grass cover, these animal operations and a lot of equestrian operations really depend on locally produced hay, locally produced alfalfa. We'll come up against some alfalfa fields soon for that kind of very important forage at the end of summer and in fall until rain comes. And there's also many interesting studies that look at the potential to integrate a kind of a rotation of hay crops and forage crops and vegetable crops. Again, most of the hay is dry farmed. For most vegetable crops, you're going to need to have active irrigation water. Right. So here there's some, I'd say, well-preserved, well-maintained greenhouses. These are most likely, again, used for a whole range of different Asian vegetables. These go both to wholesale markets, both in the San Jose area, in Oakland, and up in San Francisco. A lot of the growers here, they're from quite a few Asian nationalities, backgrounds. They are members of the Chrysanthemum Growers Association. That's their business support association. And so named when this valley was very important for the production of chrysanthemums and flowers. Now coming up on both the right and the left, we will see the Monterey mushroom plant. This is one of the 10 largest mushroom production facilities in North America. So mushrooms here are produced and sent all over the country. Monterey Mushrooms employs about 400 people. You may have seen the sign a few minutes ago that says mushroom compost for sale. And that's really an important byproduct too, because there's so much study now that shows that through for example, the Healthy Soils program, the new California Department of Food and Ag program, so many studies that shows the importance of adding compost for soil fertility. And actually through the Carbon Project, there's a lot of studies that show adding compost to rangeland also can be very important for increasing carbon sequestration and also water retention. Here you see a brand new walnut planting. This went in less than a year ago. And it looks like here, it's worth their while to plant even on 10 acres. So you can see how valuable that is. So we do begin to see reinvestment in agriculture, again, by the larger players who have often many parcels in many parts of the county and maybe many parts of the country. But clearly, these are players, business people, who are hedging their bets saying, yes, those walnuts are not going to bear for maybe another 5 or 8 years, getting to their full bearing years. So there are people, smart people, who are saying, yes, agriculture really is here to stay in the Coyote Valley. On the right-hand side, where there's you can see some fields from the grass farm. So the grass farm is actually a sod farm or turf farm that's been here for many years, and I know the owner, Aaron Gill, they work very hard to look at, even though one might think as sod is something that is kind of a water-intensive use. These days, there are many ways of doing irrigation from underneath the sod that, are we going to Spina Farms? Spina Farms? Are we taking a left here or going on? Yeah, go on, please. Yeah, thank you. Excuse me. Here again, both to the right and to the left, are extensive new walnut plantings. This is very exciting. Again, the life of a walnut tree, remember, the productive life is 30 plus years. So the people who've invested in this orchard clearly are saying they think agriculture is going to be here for a long time. And you can see this sort of form of agriculture, this sort of orchard form, does not inhibit wildlife movement. Wildlife can easily move through this sort of landscape. So again, it gives you a sense of the kind of the multi-benefit landscapes that you can have here. The Borellos have started this as a conventional orchard and have said that they're going to strongly consider, as they get going, converting it to an organic orchard, probably with a lot of factors into consideration. So now we're coming up on the left-hand side is G&G Farms. They had been for years the very largest farmer. They still grow a lot of alfalfa, which again is a crop that's in the ground for about 5 or 6 years, and so can be very important actually when well managed as a wildlife habitat as well. Exactly. And here we have another orchard, Chop Keenan's orchard, about 100 acres here over to the left. So again, really part of the reinvestment. You know, where you see dry soil over here, that is likely where there was a hay crop earlier, and then the land has been turned in preparation for planting again just prior to the rains. Wow, this is exciting. So here on the right-hand side, we're coming up on a big block of corn. So this is always a great time of year. If you plant corn now, you can get a late corn market as long as the weather cooperates. But that's a wonderful thing that I know. So now this has been long part of the Spina Farms. A few years ago, a couple of years ago, the Spina Farm business. The Spinas had been here for themselves about 25 years. Sold their business over to Yasugi Farms, and we're soon coming up on Yasugi Farms here. So let me just end by saying, at the beginning I said there were 4 really critical things. Number 1, ag is alive and well. I think you've seen that. Number 2, agriculture needs investment. Number 3, there is huge demand for people who would love to move farming operations to the valley and for farmers here who would like to expand. And number 4, it's really the uncertainty that is holding back some of that investment. I'd be delighted to talk to you further. We've been involved in work in this valley apart from working with the city. A few years ago, with support from the Coastal Conservancy, we produced a study called Sustaining Agriculture and Conservation in the Valley. And currently, our project is called San Jose Food Works, which is really exciting, working with the city about how the whole food supply chain, that set of businesses, can add so much. It already is adding a lot and can add a lot more to economic development in the city, to innovation, to the sense of authenticity, and to a whole range of job opportunities. So in that study, our current focus is working with the Department of Housing on a food business incubator needs assessment, so you can have that kind of vitality of food businesses popping up. And then also with the Office of Economic Development, thanks Kim Wallish and her team, on a wholesale food market feasibility and analysis, because it really takes the whole food supply chain, production, distribution, processing, retail, restaurant, to keep that real vitality of the agriculture and food businesses. So thank you for your attention, and happy to answer any questions. And here we are at Spina Farms, lots of wonderful things to buy here. Thank you.